Hey, okay. So Matteo is the
Hi,
technical
Sharon.
director at Nearform, where he consults for some of the top brands in the world. In 2014, he defended his PhD thesis titled Application Platforms for Internet of Things. Matteo is a member of the Node.js Technical Steering Committee, which is super awesome because he's here at jsday to be here with us and give us a talk live. But one of the things that I love most about Matteo's talk, so it's good to finally meet Matteo, is that I'm a community person, and I couldn't agree more with the topic of your talk. I think it's so important to build a community first, not just a framework, not just the technicalities and the technocratics. So we're really excited to have you here, and it's all yours.
Hey, I don't know, maybe I will get the slides. Thank you, Sharon. And hi, everyone. I am Matteo Collina. You can follow me on Twitter at Matteo Collina. Very easy to remember, probably, hopefully, I don't know. And this talk is, and I'm here to talk about community and open source and software development in general, maybe, and a tiny bit of my personal story. So hopefully, you will like all of this. So it's this talk starts from it's a long story. So once upon a time, I was wait. Here you go. If I try to get a real conference experience, but it seems not to get to here. Okay, hey, fantastic. So once upon a time, I wanted to be an open source developer. I wanted to build open source software for a living or for a significant part of my living. And I started doing my early attempts in in developing things open source on GitHub since since the early 2000s or something like that. And I was freshly out. Uh, uh, I was freshly out of university, and I started tweaking with Ruby, with CoffeeScript, with Node.js happened, and I started doing Node and doing Node things. So what happens is that now I probably have succeeded. I don't know, maybe I think I have succeeded in my goal of building open source software for a living. I have also been invited to conferences all around the globe to do so. So to present my stuff. So maybe it was I succeeded. I don't know. Hopefully so. So this story is this talk is a lot about my story and about my failures of understanding open source software and everything. So first of all, let's talk about my major failure, which is Mosca. I came here to talk about this. I came to jsday to talk about Mosca a few years ago. I don't remember which year. If somebody from the GrUSP team can find out, it was an MQTT talk or something. I definitely came here to talk about this at that point, that maybe 2015, 2016, something like that. And it was pretty amazing. It was a really amazing talk. So, but the project failed. It was an MQTT broker. MQTT is a protocol for the Internet of Things. I did my PhD on the stuff, and it enables to connect devices with things in the cloud and so on and so forth. However, it suffered from some significant problems, and I call it a failure for a lot of reasons. So the first one were technical choices, which first of all was we had unmaintainable architecture, unstable CI, no real maintainer community, but it had a very good niche and traction, and no funds or commercial strategy whatsoever. I was really bad at this. But, it was a good niche. So people loved my talks. People loved my software. A lot of companies made a lot of money with my software. I made none. So, hey, that's kind of a problem. Did become very quickly really unmaintainable software. I have built Frankenstein. It was was too big of a challenge. Note that it had been such a emotional roller coaster, because I really wanted this project to succeed, and I started building all the features that I wanted, but the internal quality suffered a bit because it was kind of the wrong architecture, and the CI was super unstable, so it would make really hard to make any progress with it. On top of that, that niche, the good niche and the good niche that I was in fact, was kind of a problem, because it means that I had no community that helped me maintain this, but at the same time, I had a good niche, so people were actually using this software, and they started to be, I tried to please them and to grow the usage of my software by fixing the bugs that they were reporting. However, they quickly become very entitled to fixes, and they said this stuff like this that I keep showing this up. I have been essentially fighting. I call them vampires, but you can call open source entitlement in a better way. I call them just vampires because they suck all the blood out of you, and you stop the will to do any open source software. Essentially, it's all the people that, like, open source is a two-way communication road. And if you are pretending somebody fixing a bug for you, then you're not playing this nice. So, but at that point in time in my life, I didn't know this. And this was very, very bad. And I felt completely and utterly destroyed about this. And I couldn't I kind of stopped doing, maintaining that project and doing a lot of other things over there. Also, a company taking my software, a startup taking my software, bundling it with others, and selling it for tens of millions of dollars did not help. So, hey. One of the things that you need to keep in mind is that impostor syndrome is actually a thing, and you should never underestimate it, how it will play it in your head. And it's at the time I was thinking that I know very little, and a lot of other people outside actually knew better than me. And the reality instead is more like this. And these two things, it's really important, because some random person showing up on a GitHub tracker might have a different experience from you, but it's not that is more like knowledgeable or know more about software development than yourself or something like that. So turns out that even though I really wanted to build software for others, and I wanted to build software for others, I was just building software for myself. I was just playing with my Lego toys and building stuff for my own use and my own pleasure, rather than looking at what the people wanted, or even how the community would be playing around. So let's go through a little bit of a list of things that makes us an open source project successful. So you might think that it's about code. It's not. There's all other things. You need to have some level of product strategy. You need to know where you're going. You need to have top-notch documentation. If you don't have documentation, your software kind of useless. You need to think about the dev experience, both about the people using your project or the people maintaining your project. You need to have some sort of release strategy. You need to think about licensing. You need to have a good CI. You need to do conference talks around to present them. You need to provide some level of support and have some strategy around support. And this is probably the hardest one of them all. And the one that I hate the most or love the most, probably depends. The problem is that there is zero chance that you can do all of that alone. And I was totally a fool in thinking that I could launch a major open source software just by myself. So some people do. and they are exceptional, but I am not, and I just did something. And if you are exceptional and you can make it alone, then you're great. But there are very few of those cases. Most of the time is you need a lot of people involved to build something great these days. So also, I am not against us doing a startup in the open source. I'm sorry, folks. Building a startup is hard. Being a successful startup around an open source project is actually harder. And the major problem with this is that any cloud provider can then compete with you, and just take your software and use it. So it's actually very hard. And related to what happened to me is that the software I built, Mosca, in a fast forward a few years, Google, Amazon, Microsoft all shipped software with the worked in a similar way, and the API Internet of Things gateways and so on, which completely make it. They have enormous resources, so it's actually really, really hard to build a company around an open source project. So maybe there is another way. How can I have other people building my vision and my open source project without building a company around it? And this is one of the key questions when you need to ask when you are evaluating or you are checking an open source project and you want to build a new open source project. So a big one, not a small utility. Okay. Now it's the key state. So what will follow start from this statement, which is an open source project is as good as its community is. So you need to nurture the community in order to make an open source project successful. And you need to make that community, and that is way more important than the code, the infra, everything else. Because if you create a community, if you create passionate people that want to help you and you empower them, then all the rest becomes fixable. You might not have all the skills that are needed. Well, if you create a good community, if you are growing a good community, if you nurture them, then somebody else will step up that have the skills that you lack, and so that you can ship that feature that people need, but you don't have a clue of. So let's fast forward and let's try again, because I talked a lot about all my mistakes. Let's talk about positive things. So in 2013, know that Mosca was about the same time. I also did another project called Level Graph. This project is totally useless, but it was a graph database on top of a key value store called LevelDB. But the greatest thing about Level Graph is that it's part of this. I was able to join this nice family of open source projects. This was a new way in 2013, where it's where you essentially it's not a traditionally guarded open source project anymore, but you start giving a lot more people commit access, because Git provides long-term. With Git you can actually roll back changes, make things just very easy. So essentially it was a movement of let's instead of trying to keep this guarded and closed and not have people contributing, let's make it open up. Let's open it up to everybody. So that's what happened. Note that this was the fundamental piece that led to the way the Node.js governance is set up. And it's the reality is that it's actually it's very, very similar. And note that in Node.js, existing collaborator can nominate somebody to be a collaborator. So essentially, you just need somebody else, and you just need to prove to somebody else that you can contribute to the project to join as a collaborator. Is fantastic, because this means that you can actually empower people to help build the product, and the product is of everybody's, is not your own. Okay, so essentially it can stand on its own. It's great. Now, when somebody tells me if this sentence, and they say this to me every single time, by the way, it also happened this morning. Okay, This very morning, somebody sent me, and I typically shit tweet about every people that try to say something like this to me on Twitter. So if you're doing this on one of my repo, know that I'm going to tweet about it. So just so that you are aware. A lot of people, a person just did something like this morning. Okay. Anyway, if somebody tells you, I'm going to stop using your library because you're not fixing this bug, and start insulting you, whatever, you need to say to them, thank you, go away. Okay. That's the bottom line. Those people don't want to be part of a community. They only want free beer. So it's better if they go somewhere else. If they use something else, they will never help your project. They will never help you at all. Okay, that's the best line. That's the bottom line. So if you want to build an open source project, a successful open source project, you need to start with, you can start scratching your own itch. And you start, what I can building and so on. And then you want to attract people that are interested in solving the same problem you have. This is a very important step. You need to create a core part, a core group of people that can help you along the journey. Know that this is also a form of validation. You have an idea. It's in lean startup lingo. It's called, validation type of thing. So you have an MVP, which is your idea. You can do a quick prototype in a day or two, whatever, or something. And then you can present this to other people and say, hey, do you like this? Do you want to join this? So it's actually pretty good. Now it's after we have after you have this idea, and you have involved and be encouraged by other people, you can actually start building something together and then share the ownership. So if other people start joining and helping you out, then you see that they are committed, and then you start building something together. And then you need to enable them to reach leadership position on the project. This is really important. You need to enable other people and involve other people in the community. You need to grow them in, add them in. It's all about community. And because, all the technical bits and so on can be fixed together. So it matters a lot, but it's the manpower, you need to be able to involve more people, and so that you can actually tackle more challenges. Otherwise, certain things will not even be possible. So it's all about community, by the way. So go back to my own experience. In 2016, I found my second niche, because my second niche was not my second niche. My first niche was IoT, but then kind of got destroyed by that company that took some of our ideas, some of our open source software, and sold it to packed it up with good marketing and sold it. Congrats to them, you are great. So what is my niche? This is my niche. It's a piece of paper. You think, why a piece of paper is a niche? Well, if there is if you take any piece of paper, you can only fold a piece of paper so many times with your bare hands. And it's also called the adapter problem or something like that. And it's, you can keep folding it. You can use an hydraulic press to fold it a little bit more, but it gets very resilient. Okay, so it's just 7 times you can fold it. So the problem with this is, why this is a problem? Well, this is a key property of performance software. If you want to make something go fast, you can only wrap it and adapt it so many times, and every single time you adapt it to one thing to another, the more abstraction you create, the more complex your software gets, the slower it gets. So back in 2016, I was in London to a client doing a performance engagement, and I was with my friend David Mark Clemens, and we spent some Valentine's night, coding a finger tool. Not great for my personal life, to be honest. But still. As part of that flow, we developed together Pinot. Pinot is a super fast logger for Node.js. If you're not using it, you should. And just check it out. It's just super fast and easy to use, and it just logs JSON. Really handy. It works everywhere. So just check it out. This library is now at a few million download, 2.5, 3 million, something like that, downloads per month. And then when we started shipping, I asked, well, would you like to help people contributing? Would you like to help maintaining Pinot? And at that point in time, that was around 2017 or something like that. And then this friend of mine got involved. And this person got involved, and then we met in 20. We met a year after or something like that. Maybe the same year in Austin, Texas, at Node.js Interactive. Fantastic conference, by the way. And it's we met together, and he became onboarded. By the way, he later changed. He was able to later get a new job, thanks to the open source work that he did. So hey, it helps. It does work. Yeah. Oh, it's 4 million times per month, not 2. It has 4 collaborators. Okay. So after I built Pinot, I thought, well, what can I build next? Well, from my early engagement, analysis on performance, I was scratching my own itch. I knew that web framework were a huge bottleneck for most Node.js applications. So if I want Node.js to become faster and more competitive with other languages and approaches that were faster than Node, I will need to build a new web framework for Node.js. And I started scratching my own itch. And I said, well, this is so big, I cannot do it alone. I went down and I asked, and I said, well, I will start doing this if I can get another one human being convinced that this is a good idea and we can do it together. So at that point in time, more or less, it was around 2016, around that time. It was September, October, something like that. I was slowly building a prototype or something, but I was doing a training course in Bologna with my good friends at Avan Scoperta, and I ended up meeting Thomas Della Vedova, which became a good friend of mine. And he asked, well, he asked me, how can I start developing open source software? How can I join this? Well, do you want to build something with me? And we started this incredible journey, and we started that incredible journey. And turns out that that I had this was actually the right call, because even with a few people, we severely underestimated how big it was, the journey with the path that we have chosen. And with building this will help us build a community, because we started adding more and more collaborators to this web framework for Node.js. Okay, we've started adding more and more, and this approach helped so much, because it became a key tenet in the community, and this work was kind of a big genesis of where the framework would have been. So without all of that would not have happened. So it's actually great. This is how Fastify was born, and I'm pretty pleased by its community, because it's use consensus seeking and some sort of open governance. We can get better, of course, as we're not as sophisticated as Node.js. It's community first. Essentially, we really welcome first-time contributors, and we really support shared ownership. Now, I'm going to stress a lot on this, okay? So it's one of the key tenets of this community is we are not going to fix your bug for you, which is the key fundamental point. You're using open source software, you have to contribute back. If you don't contribute back, then we are in trouble. It's not going to be sustainable. So in order for this community to be sustainable, we need to have some level of shared ownership. So if you find a bug, you should send a pull request. We also done some technical principles that I probably never written down, so it was a good case to write them down right now. So one of the key part here, and I'm probably running a little bit late, so I'm just going to skip some of those. It's make it really pluggable. So essentially keep the code as small as we can, and do not monkey patch core. So, hey. Right now is downloaded 5,000 times per month. It has maybe, this is not updated, by the way. I didn't update this slide. This is 15 now, and it's actually very great. A lot of people love this framework. A lot of companies are using it, from Nearform to Microsoft to other big companies are using this project. So it's actually very neat. It has collaborators from a lot of the companies that are using them. So yeah, it's pretty great. Also, our friends at UX Net-a-Porter uses this. Other companies in Italy that I can't name, unfortunately, but all of this is pretty great. So it doesn't come the realization that people use software I built. Now I'm part of the Node.js community. I help maintaining Node.js core. I normally responsible for breaking everybody in Node.js core, but that's my kind of my job, or try not to break everybody, which is I'm maintaining node streams. I co-created Pinot and Fastify. So hey, and I am, this is my modules are more or less downloaded 5 billion times per year or something. Like, it's a stupidly high number. So I'm sorry about this. I've probably broken you so many times, and I'm so sorry and grateful. So I had my good career. I have my good career in open source, so I like this. I just want to thank you all. Thank you for your time. I hope you like this. This is, of course, was absolutely live. It's 10:30 of Thursday, the 10th of September. So, and I really enjoyed doing this talk live. You can follow me on Twitter or send me emails. Note that Nearform is a professional services company based in Ireland, but we have developers all around the globe. We are really into this remote thing that now everybody's doing. We have been doing this from 2011, though, so we have pretty experience in managing our remote workforce. So if you need help for your Node.js project or JavaScript project, we do from design to DevOps to COVID apps, apparently. So we do a lot of contact tracing app for the rest of the world, not Italy. And from all of those and Node.js and so on. We are probably not hiring right now, but we probably will at some point. So you can always send you can also tune in on our nearform.com/careers, or you can just send a general application and we might take a look. So, or if you know me for whatever reason, just drop me an email and I'll see what I can do. So if you would like to join us, hey, it's fantastic. So thank you. Oh, welcome back, Sharon.
Hi, I'm here. So first of all, excellent talk. It's funny because I gave a similar talk last year at JSday. I talked about the sustainability of open source. It's a very, it's a complicated subject. We want to make sure that these projects sustain and are maintained in the long term. What advice would you have for someone really looking to get started with open source projects? What would be the first way for them to get involved, to contribute code, to do something meaningful for those who aren't so familiar?
So just give me a second. I'm talking to you, and now I need to look at you. So sorry, I just need to move the window of your. Here we go. Okay, so I can actually look at you at when talking. The best advice is to. There are a lot of projects like Node.js, like others, that have good first issue label. It's for example, Fastify as fastify.io/contribute that you can go to, and you can. There is all the list of good first issues of all the org that you can take and help. People normally help you. So the projects that adopt this mentality tend to guide you towards a solution. So if you say I want to work on this, and you open a pull request, or if you have questions, they try to answer those. So it's actually pretty great to help them in this way, to start in this way. Starting a new project, I tried that path, and as a newcomer, probably not a great idea, because you don't know a lot of things that you think you know. Is not about code, is actually a lot about human being and interacting on the web, and interacting across all the various cultures that compose the interwebs. So essentially, you need to learn also. Uh, you need to start thinking on a completely different level on what respect means online, and how to respect different cultures, and how to be welcoming and inclusive. And you don't want to sound like push people away because of bad manners, essentially. So working a lot of people that start dealing in open source have not had an experience in a multicultural global multicultural environment. A lot of people have, but it's an experience that not everybody had. As and moving from having that experience actually change your perspective on a lot of things, and it opens your mind, which is probably the best effect. And it actually changes who you are, and it's great. But you need to be able to accept that. And so it's if you are an open source maintainer, it's you can't do it's you need to be respectful for other people and other cultures. So that is
I couldn't
kind of
agree more.
it's kind of important. So it's actually very hard for it. I like a few friends that I've been hit that very hard, because they were passionate also for other things, and they ended up being very in bad situations online because of those type of stuff. So hey.
That's one thing, that's one mantra I like to take from the Apache Software Foundation. They say be welcoming, kind, friendly, and patient. And those are the things that are super important in the open source world. I couldn't agree more. Another question that came in was a little bit about when you maintain these projects, do you do this in your spare time? And if you do, how do you stay motivated? How do you find the time? What can you do if you don't even have so much time?
Okay, so first of all, I have a very high intensity job, and I have had a very high intensity job for the last 7 years, for the last 6 years and a half. So I joined the near firm at the beginning in 2014. So I do part of the maintenance in as part of my job. So I have some allocated open source time to maintain Node.js and Fastify and a bunch of the others. That was not always the case. It's the case now. I am possibly in a very privileged role also at the company, so that I have responsibilities, and I have responsibilities, and I am accountable for those. And as long as I met them, then people are happy with my performance, so I can keep doing open source, because it also helps fueling them the machine. But that was not always the case. The key starting point is to start convincing your employer, and that fixing that pesky bug that you have found in library XYZ, it's actually on their best interest, because it's on their best interest. The long-term best interest of a company is to have the bug that they find in an open source project fixed and upstreamed. That is really important. So, and that helps you giving your employer and the company and your employer confidence that you can juggle the two things, and that's where everything starts from. Note that if they don't do this, if they don't allow you to fix the problems that you have, this is actually pretty bad, because over time you will end up with a code base that is kept together with duct tape, and it will become very hard to maintain anyway. So it's, this should tell you a few things about your employer in the first place. So this is kind of my metrics on things. So you need to be careful. You need to keep upstreaming. Like, companies that prevents you from doing so are not places where I would like to work for.
I agree.
So
I say you need to be a giver before you're a taker. So if you
yes,
have patched something, even in your local code, you should probably contribute it upstream. I agree. One last question. You had a really excellent slide that I screen captured and tweeted. A little bit about what makes an open source project successful. It's not just about the code. I couldn't agree more. You need product strategy, you need documentation, developer experience, release strategy, et cetera, et cetera. This was like just really an exceptional slide. For those that don't contribute code, I think one of the things that, one of the misconceptions around open source is that you can only contribute code. I think that it's really important to contribute in other ways. Can you talk a little bit about the other ways people can get involved if they're not engineers?
Okay, so the first one is documentation. So you need to have some sort of technical or related to technical background in some form, or wanted to have. You need to be able, even if you are a designer or something, you want to be, you're still part of the tech community as a whole. Okay, so that is or you want to be, essentially. It's a great place to learn. People will teach you, essentially, if you let them. So it's really the starting point. So there are a few things that are really important. The first one is docs. The documentation is actually best not written from the person that wrote the code. So this is the typical things, the typical misconception, that people that write the software, that write the original, the implementation of the software, typically are really bad at writing the documentation for it, because it all plays right in their head. So they are not going to look at it from somebody that needs to learn that needs to learn. But very few people have the way to shift their perspective to somebody that cannot. So if you're learning to code, or you're learning to work in this industry, and you want to start contributing documentation, is actually pretty great. Also note that most of the documentation out there for open source project is actually really badly written in English. Okay, and because for some reason, and this is something that I'm starting to be obsessed with as more as I go up in my career, is I don't know why a lot of people don't have a very good written English in the tech community, both native and non-native speakers alike. Like, I've seen also native speakers that don't have a very good prose, and I don't understand this, but it's essentially you need to cultivate the way you write and your way to explain technical topics. Explaining technical topic is not as easy as writing an email or something like that. Okay. Or by the way, if you're sending a CV to Nearform, if you put in a grammar mistake, you're out. Okay, so that that people are aware of this. And general rule: if you don't know, if you put in a grammar mistake in a cover letter or a CV, then you're out. Sorry. It's these type of things is actually really, really important. And most developers don't. And to be honest, Fastify Docs is full of grammar mistakes, paragraphs that are not clear, and so on. The Node.js docs are, from my point of view, like, they're pretty clear from my point of view, but people struggle with them all the time. They don't understand how to use these things and how to plug those things together, because most of the time they just covers, it's just a reference, but they don't cover how the thing should be used together. So if I'm talking about the HTTP module and the FS module, okay, I'm not talking about how to using these two together. Okay, and the fact there is a whole gap of things that are missing in between that is on the PM ecosystem. So it's actually very hard. So all of these, it's so writing documentation, writing blog post, even writing, doing a video tutorial on how to build something, or your experience learning it is actually pretty great. Other bits that will be very helpful, it's issue triaging, literally taking the code, taking the issue, running it, saying, okay, this is a bug, this is not a bug. Just doing this is super important. It takes so much time out of maintainers. So if you want to help, this is great. These are thankless job, by the way. Other bits that are less software development focused is finding security vulnerabilities. So that is another thing that people can contribute to. Also another thankless job. Triaging those again. Checking for spec adherence. So if there is a spec, for example, the HTTP 1.1 spec or HTTP 2, HTTP whatever, you have there is a spec, and if you help a project implement the spec better, it's actually pretty great for most of them. Then testing. Okay, finding bugs and hopefully fixing them. And of course, writing unit tests is still great. By the way, if you find any of my projects that does not have 100% code coverage, send me a pull request. I'm saying it loud to everybody. Because if you get to raising code coverage helps code quality and makes things more maintainable in the long run. There is also the fact that most open source projects to be successful need a social media presence, and somebody that wants to do that it's actually very, very delicate topic. So if you get trusted in a community to be given to be the voice of the project, the public voice of the project in social media is actually really, really important. One example, we recently changed how the Node.js Twitter account is managed, and that now is governed by a committee and a few people that have access to tweet. One of those is Tierney, that kind of is fostering this group. And thank you, Tierney. You're great. It's really it's really tough, essentially, because some of those Twitter accounts can get whatever. So
awesome. That was really, really helpful. This was a great talk, Matteo. Really, you covered it end to end on why it's important to build a community and the complexities of building an open source project and maintaining it. Thank you so much for being with us today.
thank you, Sharon.
Thank you.